G'day, welcome to This is Riffin'. Today we're going to look at Phototropic by Kyuss. Another cracker tune by Kyuss, which I've been hoping to cover for a while now. Josh likes to do 2 guitar tracks, so I'm going to attempt to look at most of them. And I'll also be attacking the bulk of the riffs too. So please just know with all my videos, this is just a guide for you. The tabs aren't 100% correct at all, but hopefully it helps you jam along with the track. And as usual, I apologize for the quality of my videos and the sound. And with the tab that I've put up on the screen, I've just chunked together the numbers for you just to help it come across a bit easier. So the notational values are way off. So to play this ripper track, you'll just have to tune your guitar to C standard tuning, which goes like this. C, F, A sharp, D sharp, G, and C. But I'll probably just refer to standard tuning being E, A, D, G, B, and E. So at the very start, there's just a note around fret 10 with a bit of a slide going down or something similar to that, which you can sort of replicate there. That's just a basic idea for the intro riff there. So to make it sound a bit more similar to the album, I've also chucked on my vibra setting, which is just a sound effect on my amp. A lot of the time Josh does his power chords, he likes to use 3 fingers. So it's 7 on the A with your first finger, 9 on the D with your third, and 9 on the G with your pinky. And so you'll start with open on top, and then you'll strum that power chord on the A string. And then it's 9 on the G, back to 7 on the A, 9 on the D, 7 on the A, and then strum the power chord. And so the whole time you're leaving your fingers there just to help sustain the notes. And then you'll notice I've put an X there, which is sort of just like a quick little dead note strum Josh whips in there from time to time. And so you sort of strum it in there before changing to the 7 on the G, open on the D, and the 7 on the G. And that's just slightly whipped in there from time to time. So you don't really know it's there, but I'll put that there just in case. It might help you out, especially with the strumming there and getting in a bit of a groove. You could get away without it as well. And it might help with the picking going down, down, up, down, up, down, down. Rather than just doing all down strokes. And then for this bit, I was doing an up, then a down, then an up with the pick. That helps it just flow a bit easier. For me anyway. And it helps keep the groove going just a bit more flowy. It's also just worth mentioning that live Josh actually plays around with that riff as well, so it's never exactly the same. And there's not much live footage of that I could actually hunt down. In one of the versions though, it had a bit of a feel like this. Something similar to that. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be the same. Just before the solo kicks in, Josh starts playing a bit around with that riff, adding in some extra notes. So that goes a bit like this. And that just sort of keeps going on for a while the solo kicks in. So around the 34-second mark, he's doing that same sort of intro. Everything's exactly the same, except at the very end, there's a 6-7. So that's 6 on the G, 7 on the D. But it's also worth mentioning at the same time, track 2 actually goes a little slide up to 9 there. So that's 6 on the G with a slide to 9. So yeah, one's 6-7, while the other one's 6-9. And then at 41 seconds, same thing, but then a 9-10 on the G. And you could also play this as an octave here on the lower string if you want. I found just there it was a bit easier to play overall. And then the next one, 47 seconds, is the same except it does that little move, which is a 9 on the G, then a 9 on the D. And again, you could always play around with the octaves there. So instead of being like 9-9, it could be there as well. But just there, the tone's a bit more in par with what Josh is doing, I reckon. Before we attack the solo, I actually just want to keep going with that riff there because Josh likes to play around with it a bit coming up, and he whips in some extra little solo bits, which are just awesome. And so they're in the background while the solo's going on. And so it's really similar to that first riff we just looked at, except it's got a bit of a different feel. And so what I'll do is I'll just play through that and then start talking about what I'm doing. So that wasn't bang on note for note, but as long as you hit those notes with the album, you should be pretty sweet. I was just probably chucking in some extra things, just going by the feel. And it's one of those riffs you can afford to do that with, which is what I love about Josh's stuff. Just go with the flow and chuck in things there where it feels right. So you're still based around that power chord at fret 7 on the A string, except this time the feel's just a little bit different with the strum. So I was doing open on top, strum the power chord, then a 9 on the G, back to the power chord, 2 strums of that, 7 on the A, and then the power chord again. And so I've kept that the same every time, and then you'll be chucking in those little tail end sort of licks, which is a little bit different every time as well. The first one is a 7-9 on the G as a hammer-on. So just first finger to your third finger I find easier. So 7 to 9, down to 7 on the B. Back to the 9 on the G, 7-8 as a hammer-on, 9 on the G, 7-8 as a hammer-on, 9 on the G, and then a 7-8 on the B as a hammer-on. Again, I'm whipping in those extra dead chord type strums in there. Just feels natural for me to do that, to jump down to that lick. The next one, again, it starts with that power chord. And then that little tail section's a 7-9 as a hammer-on the G. And then 9 on the D. Here I like to jump to my second finger. just find that move a bit easier. And then it's 7, 7, 9 as a hammer-on the G, back to the 9 on the D. And then it's a 7, 9 hammer-on the D. So I'll just play that little lick again. And then I jump to my third finger there to finish it, but yeah, do whatever feels best there for you. Back to the power chord. This bit here, he sort of plays with the octave, so it's open on the D, 7 on the G. There's a little slight slide there I can hear. And in between he might occasionally strum the D just open by itself. Back to the power chord. This cool little moves, 7 on the G, open on the D, so the octaves, 7 by itself, 6 on the G, 7 on the G, and then 7 on the D. Back to the power chords. Now this one, it does something similar to this sort of vibe here. So it's a 7, 9 on the G as a hammer-on, down to 7 on the B. And then you get this cool little move, which is 7 on the B, 7, 8, 7 as a hammer-on pull-off. So that's all in one move, just with one strum. Straight to the 9 on the G, down to 7 on the B, and then do that move again to finish it off. So my feel wouldn't have been spot on there, but it sounds like that's what he's doing. Back to the power chord. This nice little move here, 7, 9 on the G, up to 9 on the D. Again, using my first and my third there for the hammer on, then I go to my second finger for the 9 on the D. 7, 9 as a hammer on the D, down to 7 on the G, 3 strums of that, 7, 9 as a hammer on the G, and then 9 on the D. Yeah, it's a nice little groove, that one. Back to the power chord. And then this one here, you're just sort of mucking around with those octaves again. Open on the D and 7 on the G. Back to the power chord. That sort of similar move to earlier. So open on the D, 7 on the G. Strum them together if you want. Then a 6 on the G, 7 on the G, up to 7 on the D. Back to the power chord. Then you get this cool move, which I might have stuffed up in my example, but it's a 7, 9 as a hammer on the G, then I think an open on the D, and then we jump down to the B string with this little move. So it's 8, 10, 8, 7, all on the B, 9 on the G, which I jump to with my third finger, which allows me to go back to 7 on the B much easier. And then it's a bend on fret 9 on the G. And then back to the power chord. Before it kicks in heavy, I think he's just mucking around with the octave again. So open on the D and then 7 on the G. And that's just before it kicks in heavy. So I'm now just going to attack what I'm calling the solo, but it's pretty much based around the other riff we were just mucking around with, except it's a bit more lick based. So there's some cool hammer-ons and stuff going on. So I'll just play through it and then give you some ideas of what I'm doing along the way. So this is played 6 times, but I'll keep moving. played 4 times before it kicks in heavy. So with this one here, you can play open on top. You can let it ring out if you want while you're doing those little licks too. I think I was cutting it off most of the time, but yeah, it's open on top, then a 7-9 hammer on the G, just using my first and third finger again, down to 7 on the B, 9 on the G, 10 to 12 as a slide on the B, then a 9 on the G, 7, 8 on the B. I'll walk you through with what I was doing with my fingers there, because I'm sort of whipping around with different ones just to help make it a bit easier. But I was doing 7 to 9 as a hammer on with my first and third, down to 7 with my first finger on the B, but then I jumped to my second finger on the 9 on the G, which then lets me slide to 10 and 12 with my third finger on the B. Just makes that whole move a bit easier. Potentially Josh just uses his first and second there. But yeah, use whatever works best as always. And then it's back to 9 on the G, 7, 8 on the B. So yeah, you play that 6 times. And then it's this move. Which is open on top, 7, 9 as a hammer on the G, down to 7 on the B, just like the other one. But then you get this cool move, which is 10 on the B, bent up and down, with a little pull off to 8. So you're just flicking off there to fret 8 on the B. And then 8, 7 on the B, 9 on the G. Back to the first one, and then to take it out 4 times, you're going to play this move, which is the 7, 9 hammer on the G, down to 7 on the B, 2 times, and then the third time 7 to 9 as a hammer on, but then 8 on the B instead, which I'll go to my second finger there. And then back to 7, 9 as a hammer on the G, down to 7 on the B. Back to your first finger, I find easier. So I hope that helps. For this next main riff coming up, I'm going to be looking at a lot of the tail end sections that Josh whips in there. And so I hope it's not too confusing for you, but as a general rule of thumb, if you just base yourself around fret 7 as a power chord, and then an octave which is open on D and 7 on the G, you can sort of get away with it. So this move happens a lot where it's a 7 to 9 as a hammer on the G, back to the 7 on the G, with the open D over the top. And so I'm also chucking in opens on the top string as well. So just playing that, you can get away with it. But every time it's just a little bit different, which I'm going to go into more detail coming up. So I just thought that's worth noting. So you can just play it in a simple sense, like this. So I hope that makes sense. I'll put the tab up as well, just to give you a bit of an idea of what you can get away with. So for this wicked bit here, when it kicks in, I'm going to play through all the different sort of tail ends that Josh whips in there. So I'll just sort of run through it slowly and give you all the bits that he's doing. because it's always that little bit different. So there's a few key moments in there that I think you should know about. We'll just work through it slowly, giving you the ideas of just how he sort of finishes each little section, because it's just such a wicked riff. It's also just worth noting, to get a heavier tone, it helps going to the neck pickup just to give it that beef. So the bulk of the riff's based around that 7 power chord on the A string, with those opens chucked in on the top string. So open on top, 7 as a power chord, open on top, 7, 7 as a power chord on the A string, open on top, 7 as a power chord. So that's Josh's rough feel there. So that little tail bit there is 7, 9, 7 on the G, which is a 7, 9 hammer on, then back to the 7. And you're also playing open on the D at the same time. You do that again, and then 2 7s. You then get this awesome one, which you hear quite a bit. That one's a bit of a tricky one to get spot on, because Scott's bass line's also whipping in over the top. So I'm going to give you a bit of an idea of what you could also do, but I think it is that little tail run where potentially it could be this. So the one I was doing was the octaves again. So open on D, 7 on G. And that move there, 7 to 6 is a slide on the G, 7 on the D, 7 on the A. Where you could potentially go with that move, which is a 7, 6 again, slide on the G, but with a 7, 9 as a slide or a hammer on the D. So they both sound cool. That one just sounds a bit more spot on to me, but that one potentially works as well. So yeah, leave a comment if you got any ideas there, what else could be going on. And then from there, you get that move, which is sort of similar to one we did earlier on the B, 8, 10, 8, 7, 9 on the G, down to 7 on the B, and then a 9 on the G as it bends. Back to the power chords. This one, which I love, which finishes with a 7, 9 on the G, and then a 9 on the D, just by himself. But you'll notice it starts with that octave of open on D and 7 on the G. So you're always sort of coming back to that. The next one, again, is mucking around with that octave to 9 on the G. Back to the power chords. And then back to the power chords. This move, which we did earlier in the intro. So that's that little move there where you're doing 7, 8, 7 on the B, 9 on the G, back to the 7. So it's got a bit of a feel like that. He just whips it in there. This next one, I've sort of combined both the two tracks. So it's got a bit of a feel like this. Something like that. That one's just all octaves. Back to that move again. He does revisit that little lick again. And then he does a last little one, which is that little move, which is 7 to 9 on the D as a hammer on, down to 7 on the G, and then you do it again. So in true Josh fashion, every time's just that little bit different, which is what I love about his style of playing. It's not always the same. So I brushed over that pretty quickly, sorry. But as long as you are basing yourself around that octave of open on D and 7 on G with that hammer on to 9, you sort of can't go wrong. So you can just play it like that every time. It would sound wicked. But just those little extra tail sections are just awesome to chuck in there when you can. Going to be again based at 7 as a power chord on the A string. So open on top, 7 as a power chord, open on top. And then for this bit you'll do an open 7 and then a bend of the 7 power chord. So down and up. And then you're jumping down to that octave. So open on D, 7 on the G. And then from that octave there, you slide to 9 on the G, another 9, 9 to 10 as a slide, another 10, 10 to 12 as a slide, 12 to 14 as a slide, 14 to 16 as a slide, and then 14 on the D. So you're just creeping your way up. You can let that open D linger as well, just as an idea. And that sounds pretty cool too. He potentially on the album could let the D just ring out as you're working your way up. So yeah, either way sort of works well there. So you're going to do that 2 times. Then the third time around's the same deal with the power chord, doing the bends down to the octave, which is open and 7. Then you go 7 to 9 as a slide on the G, 9, 9 to 10 as a slide, 10, 10 to 12 as a slide, 12 to 14 as a slide, 14 to 16, and then you're going to bend that 16 down and up. So yeah, you could either let that open D linger or not at all. And then the 4th time's the same as the first one. You're then going to revisit the first riff again, and most of that's the same, except again the little tail ends are a bit different. So I'll just run through a few of the new ones that Josh is whipping in there. The first one gets me a bit. Something like that. So it was like a 9-7 pull off on the G, up to 9 on the D, down to 7 on the G, 7 to 9 as a hammer on the D, 7-7-7 on the G, 9-7 as a pull off, 9 on the D, 7 on the G. Yeah, he chucks it in there pretty quick. Then there's another one at 420. Which is a cool one. So that's 7 to 9 on the G as a hammer on, down to 8 on the B, 7, 8, 10 on the B, 8, 7, 8, 7 as a pull off, 9 on the G, back to 7 on the B. So that one done a bit slower has that sort of feel to it. Then at 425, this one gets played twice. Sounds awesome. So that against that octave at the open and 7 has a hammer onto 9, back to the octave, 7 9 on the G, 9 on the D, 9 on the G, 9 on the D. So he sort of stomps that at the end. And then sometimes I'm also doing that vibrato as well, just out of habit. Then the last one has a bit of a feel like this. Where he bends the 9 on the G. Yeah, something like that. That just rings out to finish it off. So that last chord there, I think Josh is doing this one where it's that power chord at fret 7 on the A, but that high E string's ringing out too. So it's open on top, 7, 9, 9, and then an open E. You potentially could do the open B too, which still sounds cool. I think that's getting blocked because when you do the 3 fingers for the power chord, that sort of blocks the B string anyway, most of the time. So yeah, there's 15 strums of that. Or potentially you could just do the power chord and not worry about the open E string, which also sounds cool. Such a good song, this one, and I hope it helps you out in some way. If you've got any questions, please leave a comment below and I'll catch you soon. Bye.